Today is the 7th sewing marathon, and all day long you will be able to watch videos made by other sewists honoring one of our very own sewing marathon sewists, Amber from Sew Majestic. Today we will all be sewing up the Willow wristlet. This is a pattern designed by Amber, and we'll all be doing a different version or showing different techniques of how we make up this pattern. These sewing marathons have been a way for me to just connect with other people within the sewing community and just have a great time, and to have tutorials that are just a little bit more relaxed and fun, and I very much look forward to doing this one. This is my tester version of the Willow wristlet. It comes together really quick in a fun way. I'm using materials from Amber from her business Sew Majestic, because not only does she write patterns, but she also has water resistant fabrics like what I'm using today. She has vinyls, and she has zippers and zipper pulls like this one here. So this is my version I made first. It turned out wonderful, and so I plan on using pretty much the same techniques with just a few additions in my second one today. So let's go ahead and go over all the materials we'll need to create our Willow wristlet. In my version today, I'm going to be using not only Amber's pattern, but also her materials. The link will be in my description. So for the main panel, we're going to cut out 3 of these. I'm going to be using this print for my exterior. It is a water resistant canvas, and I do have 2 exterior pieces and 1 lining piece. For my exteriors, I have not interfaced anything with this yet, but I did go ahead and add a tag on the front and a tag on the back. For my lining, I don't have anything on there yet either. For my test version, I did add a layer of foam in between my exteriors and linings. I'll probably do that again on this one. It did make for a very structured bag. Turning it out was a little tricky, but in the end it had a great shape and really good structure, so I think I'll try that again. So this is the 3 main panel pieces you will need to cut out. I'm going to attempt to add a layer of piping around my exterior, just the front. I'm not going to do on both sides, so if it looks really bad on the front, then that will become my back. So I'm going to be just using a piece of vinyl for this, and I'm not going to add anything inside it. This is a very thin, soft vinyl, so it's very domestic friendly. I cut this at 2 inches, and I'm just going to fold it in half, and then I will sew it into the exterior here and base it around and have that caught just on the front. I'm going to be having 4 zipper panels. I will have 2 linings and then 2 exteriors. On the linings, I don't have any interfacing. On the exteriors, I did use the pattern piece and cut out a piece of Decaville Light, and I interfaced that on there just to give it a little more stability. So this is my zipper panel pieces. Here is that bottom gusset piece. We have 1 lining, 1 exterior. Once again, I did add the Decaville Light to the exterior piece using the pattern piece that is provided. I am going to be making a card slot, so here is my card slot piece. We will be making 1 of these, nothing on the back of this one. After we have this card slot piece folded, we will then add the left and right pieces, and then that will be that 4th main panel piece because we have 3 cut out. This will be the 4th one. In addition to that, we are going to need 1 piece of zipper tape. This again is from Amber. We are going to need 1 wristlet strap. I just used the pattern piece, and then I did a 4-way fold on it. I do have a 1/2 inch swivel hook added onto that already. I'm doing the wristlet version, so I will just have 1 D-ring connector. So I have this folded, not a 4-way fold, just the long raw edges folded to the middle, to the center there. They're just meeting there. So I have the D-ring on it, but I haven't sewn it yet, so I have to take it off to sew it, but I do have that. And 1 zipper pull. These are all the pieces I'm going to be using to create this Willow wristlet today in my tutorial. And while I will be showing a full tutorial on this pattern, I'm also going to take the time for us to just kind of pay a little bit of respect to Amber, kind of get to know her a little bit more. So this will be a casual tutorial and kind of have it a more personal video. So after watching this one, if you would like for me to create a version without all the personal information, just let me know. But I hope that you can still get everything you need to sew up the Willow wristlet while having some fun while we're doing it as well. So the first things we will do is I am going to remove my D-ring, and then I'll just top stitch down both long edges of this D-ring connector piece. I'm also going to work on this wristlet strap. The way I will do that to get it started is I will leave the swivel hook on this one, but I'm going to take some of these clips off or slide them down, and I'm going to open up just the edges. I'm going to place these two edges right sides together, matching them up at that short top edge. Once we have these clipped, we're just going to sew across here with the seam allowance given the pattern. I will back stitch when I start and stop, and then I will also top stitch down both long edges to make a complete wristlet loop. So let's go ahead and get this pattern started with these few steps just to kind of prep things and get them out of the way. I top stitched down both long edges of this D-ring connector, and then after I did that, I slipped it on and then just top stitched across so it kind of was secured on there. I'm going to set this aside till I need it. For the wristlet strap, I sewed the two top short edges right sides together, and then I refolded it and top stitched down the long sides here on all around to make this loop. And then I added my swivel hook and then just did a rope top stitching there to kind of secure it so it wasn't flopping around. I won't need this again till the very end, so I'm going to set it aside too. I'm going to pull out what I'm considering my front piece. I'm going to add a row of piping on this. The curves are fairly gentle, so I feel like it'll be okay. If it looks bad, I'll just flip it around and use the other side. No big deal. Like I said, I'm using this vinyl with piping. The only thing you really need to know ahead of time is what your seam allowance is. So once you know the seam allowance, and you can kind of decide how wide you want to cut the piping, because that will depend on how much of the piping you want to show after you sew on with that seam allowance. I'm going to start sewing a little bit away from that edge so that I can overlap the two whenever they meet. I also have another piece of this cut because I don't think the one piece will be able to go around all the way. I feel like I'll need to add the second piece. I'm not changing my thread because this is just a basting stitch and it won't show in the final end version of this bag. So I'll start by back stitching here and then just go 1/8 of an inch away just to get everything secured. I have had the pleasure of meeting Amber in person a couple of times, and I promise that in person she is just as wonderful as she is online. She is kind, considerate, authentic, and just a wonderful person. I have been buying from Amber for probably 2 or 3 years now, and I am one of her biggest fans. She is someone that has quality products. You can see me snipping right here just into the curves just to let this piping kind of spread out a little bit. She is someone that has high quality products and even cares about how she ships them. They are always shipped out quickly, and she tries to be very environmentally cautious in her choices for shipping. When Amber decided that she wanted to open her business, she knew she wanted to choose a name that was something that just mattered to her. She was stumped, kept trying to figure it out for weeks, thinking about it. And her husband, Jason, was actually the one that came up with the name. Jason knew that Amber was a true lover of the fantasy genre in books, and so he wanted to kind of help her incorporate that in her business. So he came up with the name Sew Majestic. Amber loves fantasy books, and by fantasy, I mean the whole thing. Dragons, elves, magic, all of that. So she wanted her business to reflect her, and so that's why she chose that name. Now, while we're doing this sewing of her pattern, I want to kind of have a little fun with kind of connecting her business name to this pattern name. So the pattern's name is the Willow Wristlet. This pattern was named after her niece, Willow. Willow is a twin and was born just a little bit over 4 pounds, and so when she was designing the Willow Wristlet, she wanted it to be just like her niece, small but mighty, and it definitely does that. This pattern is cute and adorable, but still has plenty of room and can hold everything you need. So I want to take the time to play the game, kind of like that game, the chain game, where you have to try to connect the names of two things that seem kind of random. So I want to try to connect the name Sew Majestic to the Willow Wristlet by just giving random facts through trivia. Now, I could do this in a very easy way and just say, oh, willow trees are very majestic. That would be easy, and that's not the way I'm going to do it though. Throughout this tutorial, I'm going to give really random, useless facts about dragons and willow trees to try to connect these two names together. Okay, so we are very close. I'm not upset about it because I knew whenever I was kind of dry fitting it, it wasn't going to fit. So I'm just going to cut off a piece and just kind of wrap it around. Do I hate that I'll have 2 seams instead of 1? Yeah, I do, but it's not too big of a deal, and I don't think it'll be very noticeable at the end. Whenever you add a piece of piping, the way I do it is I'm just simply going to wrap it around. I'm not doing anything special. I'm not doing any fold overs, anything like that. If this was a material that would unravel, like a fraying material, yeah, then I would have to fold the edges under, but I don't have to with this. So I'm just wrapping the first piece around, and I'm going to continue stitching on here. So I just trimmed the piping so that it fits perfectly over there, and I can finish sewing and get that taken care of. This does mean I have 2 seams, but I'm not too worried about it looking bad at the end. Also, you'll see my curves are poking up here. They will lay down more once I come in with that full seam allowance, but if you don't want yours any risk of it sticking up, just make yours skinnier. I'm having mine a little bit fat. I wanted the blue to kind of mimic the water, since this is kind of ocean scenes from Amber's materials here. Now that I have my front piece prepped, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull out my 1 lining piece. My other piece will be my credit card slots, which I haven't made yet. And I'm going to attach this wrong sides together and just base this in place. This does mean that we will be binding this bag. If you are uncomfortable with binding, there are plenty of tutorials on my channel that go over the proper steps. For me, I do feel the most important thing with binding is not the sewing, but the actual like folding of it. So if you make sure you fold it over properly, you will have an easy time with sewing on binding. You can always use a waterproof canvas to make the sewing on a little bit easier and a little less work. So now that I have these 2 pieces right sides together, let me just double check that my placement, yeah, I want to make sure that everything was the right way, since my print is a little bit directional. I'm just going to baste this in place all the way around. While I'm basting this in place, we will start with our random useless facts that nobody needs or cares about. But did you know that baby dragons have their very own name? Just like a baby cat is a kitten and a baby dog is a puppy, baby dragons are called hatchlings. Now that you have these two pieces attached, you can go ahead and trim off any excess or any loose thread you have and set this aside. The next thing we're going to work on is we're going to work on our zipper gusset. So you can pull out your 4 zipper panel pieces, your zipper and your zipper pull and your D-ring. We will use all of these in these next steps. So the way I like to do my zippers is sometimes I will choose to baste these two pieces in place first. So I will just have my lining right sides up. I will have my zipper tape right sides up and just lay them on top of each other. I don't have to worry about a zipper pull and which way it's facing because I don't have it on there. I always cut my zipper tape to be longer than my panel. It might waste a little bit of zipper tape, but it just makes for an easier sew for me. And plus I don't have to worry about getting proper measurements because I know that I'll have plenty of room. So I'm just going to start by basting these two in place, just 1/8 of an inch, just to get them attached. In the Incan culture, they believed that dragons had the power to make change in the world. Not only with things like maybe breathing fire or things like that, but they also thought that they could affect the weather. They thought they could bring about rains or any kind of like weather related events. They thought they had control over the water in general, whether it be bodies of water or rainfall. Now that we have the lining attached, go ahead and pull out one of your exterior pieces, and then you want to orientate it the way you like if your print's directional. For me, I like to make sure that with the zipper tape, both of my zipper panel pieces are looking away from the zipper tape. So for me, that means mine will look like this in the end. So I want to be able to, let me turn around so you can see it. I want it to be able to look this way. So when I'm looking at the front, it's looking the right way. So that means I will flip it upside down to attach it. Now I'll have to make sure that I line up those short edges, and then I'm going to sew with the full seam allowance now all the way down this edge. So since dragons by some cultures were able to control the rain and the waters, that made them extremely important to plants and trees. So that is our first link to connect Sew Majestic to Willow. The willow tree in many cultures have been believed to be magical, especially in the Celtic civilizations. They believed that having a willow tree planted near your home brought about great luck. Now that we have these two pieces sewn right sides together, what we're going to do is we're going to pull them wrong sides together, and we are going to baste the raw edges in place and then top stitch along the folded edge we just sewn. Now for me, I personally like to baste the raw edges first. I feel like that gives me a good grasp to pull while I'm sewing to get a really nice stitch along this top stitch, but it is a personal preference. So not only did the Celtics believe that the willow tree being planted near your home would have good luck, they also believed that knocking on a willow tree would send away bad luck, which brought about the saying and is the root behind the saying of knock on wood. This is how that first side of the zipper panel looks. We have the exterior and the lining attached. We have everything top stitched. Now that we have this side attached, I'm going to go off camera and attach my other side, and then we'll come back for our next steps. I have an adorable zipper panel. This is so cute. I love Amber's tape. I feel like it just matches perfectly with this. So here is the exterior. Here is the lining. I did go ahead and add my zipper pull. I have it closing to the left, and I did trim down the extra zipper tape. Now I want to place my wristlet strap connector on the same side that the zipper is closing, so I'm going to put it on this side, and I am going to leave quite a bit of overhang. I don't like my connectors too long, and also I feel like the extra overhang will provide a little bit more stability. So I'm just going to base this in place by sewing back and forth a few times to connect this. I'm not trimming that down. I'm just going to go ahead and pull out those two bottom gusset pieces. I'm going to take my lining, place it right sides up. I'm going to set my zipper panel on it right sides up, so my lining pieces are right sides together. I want to make sure my D-ring is down. We don't want to get hit by a needle, get that hit by a needle. I'm going to place my exterior right sides together directly on top of that. You can baste the lining in place if you want, but whenever it's a short distance like this, I feel pretty comfortable by just adding a few clips and then sewing around there. And I didn't clip it. Let me flip that over, get that clipped. Now that we have that clipped into place, let's sew this with the same allowance given in the pattern. Let's make sure we backstitch when we start and stop. After we have those sewn right sides together, we are going to separate the bottom gusset pieces from that zipper panel. So you can see they're going wrong sides together. I'm going to do a quick top stitch on the bottom gusset piece, not on the zipper panels, just to secure those. I want to make sure that I keep that lining pulled tight so it doesn't kind of creep up and get in the way. This is what I have now. I take these two bottom edge pieces and I'm going to separate the exterior from the lining. And I want them both to meet over here at the other side of that zipper gusset, just like we did originally. Let's clip these into place as well on that short side. Let's look at what you have. And now we're going to sew this again with that same seam allowance, back stitching when we start and stop. I am going to flip this right sides out. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to start basting these edges together. So what I'll do is on the side that I've already top stitched, I will start basting all the way down this long edge. I'll make sure I'm keeping both the lining and the exterior in line, go all the way down, top stitch across here, and then baste back up again. So the second way that we were able to connect Willow and Dragon was that they are both linked to magic, and they are both looked at by different cultures of possessing magic and being able to affect different things in our natural environment. Some other interesting facts about the willow tree is that the willow tree bark has been used for many centuries in different cultures as a medicine. The bark can be used to make into a tea that is known as a remedy for coughs, fevers, and even aches and pains. It was kind of known as nature's aspirin. And it even helped with inflammation, so it was kind of considered an anti-inflammatory. Some cultures believed that witches' brooms could only be made successfully from the willow tree, and if it wasn't made from a willow tree, it was not a true witch's broom. It would not possess the powers needed for witches and their fights. Now that we have this gusset complete, we can go ahead and mark quarter marks by putting the two seams together and making our quarter placements on both sides of the gusset. So 4 marks on the top, 4 marks on the bottom, or back I should say, and then go ahead and make your quarter marks on the main panel that we already have completed. We will set that aside, and then we will go ahead and start working on our credit card slots. It's time to make the credit card slots, and I think people hate making credit card slots second only to binding. I don't know why. I like making credit card slots. I feel like they're fun, simple, just a relaxing way to do it. But for those that hate it, I'm going to give my top things that I never, ever, ever, ever do whenever I'm making credit card slots. So here is my credit card slot piece of fabric. I'm going to show you the template I use. So let's set that out of the way. Most of the time, your credit card slots have the same distance in between them and it alternates. That's pretty much the same for most patterns, actually. So you can pretty much, just depending on if you look at the pattern and if it's a double or single. This is a single credit card slot, means that each of these is just going to be for one side instead of there being two sides or two rows for credit cards. I'm not saying it's always that way. I'm saying traditionally, most of the times it's that way. So you can make a template, make it out of poster board or cardstock, and then what you can do is, I don't know if you can see or tell, but I have one side that is curved and then one of these which is kind of like a triangle. I can draw these notches on the back of my material so that I know that the circle is going to be a side that I fold wrong sides together. The triangle is going to be right sides together. That kind of helps me to kind of understand what I'm doing. So the first thing that I never, ever, ever, ever do is I never, ever worry about making the measurements, because I have a template that I just kind of use as standard. I need to know how long it's going to have to be, but even if you have to trim it down, make it extra long because it's easier. The second thing I never, ever, ever, ever do when making credit card slots is I never make them with an iron. I use an iron only at the end. I have found that it is easier to pinch and adjust as we go and then look at that end result to see if we like it before we even get near an iron. If you start making the creases and then at the end they're crooked or they're off, then you have to have like all kinds of drama trying to get those creases out. So that's what we're going to do with this. We are going to pinch, we are going to crease and make these credit card slots. Then at the end I will use the iron. The third, sorry, I'm getting confused with all the things I never, ever, 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 ever do. The third thing is that you have to be careful with your marking tool. I have made so many mistakes with the wrong marking tool. You want to really try to use a friction pen that can be erased with heat. One thing is that if you make a mistake and put the line wrong, you can easily just erase it and do it again. Second thing, if you're using a light material, and if you use a permanent marking tool and you use a light material, you can sometimes see it on the other side, on the right side, even though you're marking on the wrong side. If you just try to make marks in the seam allowance, that's okay if you're really good with it, but sometimes that can lead to being crooked. So lots of times I do that, but if you're new to starting out to making credit cards, I do recommend using a friction pen so that it can be erased and gone, but stay long enough for you to see what you need to see. So we're starting here at the bottom. This is the bottom of my credit card slots. My first one tells me I'm going to fold these wrong sides together. Now I could just pinch these wrong sides together, but what I like to do is I like to take my template or something hard and kind of firm and sturdy. I place it on that line. I'm going wrong sides together, so I'm just going to kind of pull it up. Before I crease, I make sure that it is in line with my sides. If it's in line, then I crease. I'm just creasing here with this material. I'll slip this out and crease again. There you go. I do the same thing with using cotton woven or cotton canvas. Water resistant does hold on to the crease a little bit more, but it still is not too much different if you're using just a cotton material. For my second slot, it tells me to go right sides together. I am going to fold it this way. It's easier to pinch whenever you are going right sides together because you can just see it. I'm making sure my edges are lined up. But you can still put in the paper and do it that way. It's just, I typically do it this way. We're back to wrong sides together. Pull out my template. Do the same thing. We are going to continue this. This is called fan folding, or they'll say making peaks and valleys, hills and valleys, whatever. They have all kinds of names, but it's basically the same concept always when making credit card slots. Line it up with the sides before I push down. Make sure I'm all the way against there. Now at this point we have a couple already there. I'm going to flip this out so we can kind of see what we're doing. Once we have those creases, you can kind of see, you can fold it up following that natural crease as to what it's going to go and the distance it's going to be in there. So we will continue folding these credit card slots. I am not using the iron till the very end, which brings me to the next thing that I never ever do with credit card slots is I don't ever interface. Even if I'm using a very thin cotton woven material, I'm not adding interfacing on the back of it. Here's what I will do though if it needs it. For this, a water resistance canvas, I'm not going to add anything at all. Nothing ever. It's firm enough, it's sturdy enough, it doesn't anything. If I was using a very thin cotton woven, as if it's a really thin like material, I will sometimes put just a layer of Decaville light in your peaks, not in your valleys, but in your peaks, and I would have it right up against that fold, so it would be just coming underneath here, and so that whenever you have it folded, you have that little bit of extra firm stabilizer. It would only be about 1/4 to 1/2 of an inch strip, the width of the card slot, and that just helps with that security. The next thing I do, if it's a cotton canvas or a cotton woven, not with this material, is after I get all of these folded up, let's just say it's just like this, I would go to the back and I would put the interfacing down the length of it and then iron it on. So say this was all the credit card slots I had, I would have that piece of interfacing there. It will kind of act like a glue and secure these to each other, but it also helps that we don't have all kinds of extra interfacing in these edges to make it really bulky. I sew on a domestic. These are the things I do to make it easier and to get a better look at the end. If you sew on an industrial, you don't have to worry about these steps. I'm going to make the rest of these off camera and then we will come back and look at them, and those are my top tips of things that I never ever do when making credit card slots. I have my credit card slots pressed. They look great, beautiful, love them. And I will have one last thing to tell you that I don't do with credit card slots is I don't top stitch. I used to, and whenever I started batch sewing, I felt like just skipping that step saved a little bit of time. And also, I always felt it looked just kind of ugly, my top stitching, and I just didn't like it. So I just quit. So if you want to top stitch, you would do that now while they were still separate, and you would just separate each one and top stitch. I'm not going to. So I'm going on to the next step, which is attaching my side pieces. So this is the way mine will go. My print's a little bit directional. So I will just flip it, clip it in place. You should have a little bit of overhang on yours, maybe not a lot. I don't have a lot on mine, but you should have a little bit that you'll need to trim. Mine's very minor. And I'm just going to clip this in place. I'm going to be very careful sewing this, and I'm going to go slow and top stitch at the top of the bottom. I want to make for sure that I'm holding these really tight and not going too fast so that my foot doesn't pull the credit card slots and shift them. And I'm actually just going to back stitch once there, and I'll do the same for the next one and go all the way down. Once I get these sewn, I'm going to go ahead and open up this side piece and then top stitch down. So we are just going to pull that open. I'm not going to move my seam allowance. I'm leaving it under this side piece, but I'm just doing a really nice press. And then I'm going to top stitch this side piece to attach it to this seam, just so everything's secure and it's laying flat. So during my tutorial, I've been talking about dragons and willow trees and kind of connecting the two. And so for my last random and useless fact, I'm going to talk about willow tree reproduction, which I'm sure everyone has had this on their mind, and it's a burning topic that you guys all want discussed. We have this credit card side slot attached. Let's do the same thing with the other one while we continue talking about tree reproduction. The willow tree is dioecious. I hope I said that right. Dioecious, I think. And so what that means is that the willow tree, when you see one, it's either male or female. Willow trees produce either male or female flowers, and so it's not both on the same tree, which a lot of plants are. Pumpkins have both the male and the female flowers, and you can actually help pollinate them, because a pumpkin won't grow unless the bee lands in the female and the male part and carries the pollen there. Yeah, so that's how that happens. But for the willow, the pollen has to be blown from, like, say, a male tree to a female tree in order for pollination to happen. So because of that, they also have a secondary way to reproduce, which is by propagation, meaning that if a branch from a willow tree falls, it can actually mimic and clone itself that way by that fallen branch and produce an exact replica of the parent. Super cool, super interesting. Now you know about willow tree reproduction. So I have my beautiful credit card slots made. I am going to take my bottom piece and my top piece, and I'm going to make sure that the credit card slots are at the top. Clip these right sides together, and I'm just going to baste around. If I need to do any more trimming, I will. So I bet this morning when you guys decided to come and watch my video, you did not think you would learn about willow tree reproduction. You never know what you're going to learn by watching these videos, so always be ready for something weird. So now we have the exteriors and linings all attached. Everything's attached. Let's look at what we got. We also have our gusset. We're ready to put everything together. So lucky for you, no more weird random facts. I have completed my random facts. We're going to focus now on just finishing this bag and seeing how beautiful this wristlet turns out. So what we're going to do is, I'm not going to do all this on camera, is I'm going to make for sure that I have my zipper closing to the left, and I'm going to attach this right sides together with my exteriors. I'm going to clip these corner marks. They will be with each one of the corners, in the center of each one of the corners. So what I'll do is I'll clip all around and then I'll sew this. So after I get this all clipped, I'll clip the front first. I'll come back and show you what it looks like, and then we'll talk about how we're going to sew it together. So I have the gusset and the exterior main panel clipped right sides together. Everything looks great. So what I typically do with a gusset and binding and things like that is I typically sew it with this main panel against the bed of the machine and just kind of do it that way. But for this one, when I sewed my first one, I really enjoyed sewing it with the gusset against the bed, and that's typically not like me, but I just felt like it was a really fun, easy sew. I think it's because I made this so stiff. I decided not to put the foam in this one. A little bit of a, like an easier finish. I felt like it'd be a little bit of an easier sew. We'll see how the structure looks at the end. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to sew it with the gusset against the bed, and I'm just going to do a basting stitch. I will come back in with the binding, and I'll just use some waterproof canvas, bind around here, and that's when I'll get that full seam allowance. So I wanted to show you how it looks attached. This is just with that basting stitch. So now I'll go get my canvas and wrap it around for the binding and sew with the full seam allowance all the way around. Do the same steps for the other one, and when I come back, you'll see it completed. My second Willow wristlet is done. It is so cute. I love the colors. The materials for both of these are from Amber Sew Majestic, as well as both the zippers. I do like the one with the foam better. I feel like it fills it out more. It's definitely more sturdy. This one is still good. It has great structure and everything, but the foam just really takes it up, I feel like. And only thing I did was I had the foam in the main panels. The zipper panels are both the same. So this came together really quick. If you leave out the card slots, it's even quicker. So you definitely could do that if you just want to use this as a wristlet without the credit card slots. I honestly think it would be a really cute like little toiletry pouch for whenever you're going on trips or things. Super cute. Kids would love these because they're just the perfect size, which is probably why Amber made this in honor of her niece Willow. Thanks so much to Amber from Sew Majestic for letting us have this marathon today. Thanks for all the other sewists who have created the tutorials and just spent the day sewing with us. And thanks to everyone who's watching and chatting with us. You guys make it worth it for sure. Just make it a fun day. I really enjoy these, and I'm just so glad we had this time to connect and have fun in the sewing community. If you have a pattern you'd like to see us do a marathon for, definitely let us know. And I hope today in your sewing room that you're able to just have a fun day that helps you feel connected to your community and just fun and brings a smile to your face. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.